Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Miracle of Motherhood. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today, I will be speaking to an inspiring widowed mother of 10, and we'll be exploring her journey of motherhood, faith, and community. Come along with us as we explore her motherhood journey together.
Welcome to the Miracle of Motherhood. Cherish every season of the journey. With your host, Carrie Ferris. Please subscribe to join our community.
Hey, welcome. How are you doing today? Welcome to the Miracle of Motherhood. First off, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Okay. I'm Elaine Harrah. I am a 41-year-old U.S. Army veteran's widow. I have 10 children that I homeschool. They're ages 17 to 1. So that's a little bit about us.
Oh, that was a big age gap. How old was your youngest when you lost your husband?
The baby turned 1 3 days after he died. It's been almost a year for us.
Years. She's almost 2.
Yeah. It's kind of can't believe I'm still standing after a year, but I'm still here. So
I don't know how you're standing either.
that's
That's got to be the hardest thing. What first led you to homeschooling, and what has that journey looked like for your family before and after you lost your
So
husband?
I never intended to homeschool ever. That was not my plan at all. Thankfully, God has other plans that are better than mine. My oldest went to a private kindergarten. She was abjectly miserable the entire year that she was there. I remember getting to about Christmas time, and she cried every day when I dropped her off, and she cried every day when I picked her up. And at Christmas time, I was like, okay, obviously, I cannot do this to my child. Seeing her that miserable just broke me. So I very, very reluctantly started homeschooling. I would say it took until probably about year 4 or 5 before I actually enjoyed it. Now we just started our 12th year homeschooling, so that little girl that cried every day in kindergarten is now a senior, so she will graduate in May and walk across the stage, which will be a feather in my cap as well. I've homeschooled her the whole way through. She's an incredible young woman. I'm so proud of her already. And
Is she your
yeah,
oldest, first to
yes, my
first
oldest,
wait,
first one to graduate, first one I've homeschooled all the way through. So it can be done, and the longer I've gone
it
along
can
homeschooling, the more chill I've kinda gotten about it, so and I'm really grateful for that. She's taught me so many lessons. I call her my guinea pig, and I make all my
I do the
on
same
you, forgive me, and she's very sweet and forgiving.
with those oldest children.
I know, they're just a gift.
They are.
So this year, I have 8 that are school age. I have 3 in high school, 1 in middle school, and then 4 in elementary, and then the one-year-old and the 3-year-old at the end that just kind of are along for the ride. And so homeschooling at first looked like, I don't know what I'm doing, a lot of more boxed or structured curriculums, that kind of thing. As I started to kind of find my groove with homeschooling, it definitely got less about a box and a checklist and more about what kind of skills do I want my children to have, and how do I teach them to love learning and to love the search for knowledge, not necessarily knowledge itself. And because I can't possibly teach them everything they need to know by the time they graduate high school, but what I can do is I can give them a love for learning and a fearlessness about going out and finding answers for themselves. And so that's my focus kind of shifted to that. And now, as a widow with 10 children, I used to have at least some help from my husband. He was my math guy. Losing my math
Yep.
guy was pretty brutal because math is not my thing at all. And so homeschool has looked a bit different now. Everything used to revolve around his work schedule, and now, for better or worse, we have more freedom, I guess. We just started. We've been in school about 3 weeks. So far, it's good. So far, great. It's a lot of managing expectations, and time management is something that has to be taught. Kids are not born with it. I learned this. So one of the things that I did do that I've done progressively as we've gone along homeschooling, especially when my husband did get sick, was to really teach the older ones how to manage their own studies. I would give them lesson plans, but then it was completely up to them. This is how much you have to complete in a week. I don't care if you do it in 2 days. I don't care if it takes you all week. This is what you get done. Here is your checklist. You manage your time. I don't care which subject you do first. Trying to back off, especially starting in middle school, because I have a child who's in 6th grade now, and trying to back off and let him learn how to deal with his own requirements, his own things he needs to get done, giving him a little bit of freedom. And it's worked really well because now my high schoolers, I have 3 in high school right now, and they take care of their own things. I mean, I check in, I plan their curriculum and I check in with them, but they really don't need me. I don't hover. I try not to hover at all. So that really is essential, especially with a large family and a lot homeschooling. The younger grades, of course, need much more hands-on help from mom, but my ultimate goal is to raise my children to be functional adults. So functional adults have to be able to manage their own time, their own tasks. So that truly is one of the biggest things that I started working very hard on when my husband did get sick, because the more they could work independently, the easier it made it for me trying to manage everything else. So, yeah.
Wow. It sounds like we're very similar when it comes to our teaching styles with our children, because my fifth is starting high school this year. And it's very much like, here's your stuff. This is what you have to get done
Mhm.
for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And I don't care how you do
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And she told me today that she wants to get all of her English for all of high school done this year, and then next year work on other things.
Sure.
Because we homeschool, we can do
Oh,
that.
yeah, dude, think outside the box. That's only gonna
Yes.
our children well later in life, because things in real life as an adult are very rarely pre-planned and predictable. You know, the more
Yeah,
the better for them long term, really.
absolutely. And the more she can focus on one subject, I feel that she can really dive into
Yeah,
that and be confident in that
yeah,
subject before moving to another subject. So I was all for it. I was very much, let's do that. That's fine.
yeah, absolutely.
Let me load that stuff for you and let's do that.
No, absolutely. It's a great
So
plan.
that's what started. So awesome. And again, I've my 6-year-old learning how to read takes so much time. So I know you're there.
I will be there for, quite a while. Yeah,
Forever. Feels like forever. I feel like I've been teaching somebody how to read for the last 20 something years. So
'cause
I
you have it.
have. Yes. Yes. So I'm still
Yeah.
there. All right. So moving back in time a little bit, can you share how your husband's heart condition impacted your family when y'all first learned about it?
He deployed to Afghanistan, and we started noticing issues when he first came home. We noticed there were strange symptoms we couldn't explain that were never fully investigated. We tried for several years to get some answers for his symptoms, but ultimately, in February of 2020, he wound up in the hospital. And
Okay.
he went in thinking he was healthy. He was 41 on no medications. We just thought he was sick. And over the course of the week he was hospitalized, he almost died on me. And the news each day kept getting worse and worse. None of the doctors could explain why he had such catastrophic damage to his heart. He had no risk factors. He had no high blood pressure. He had no high cholesterol. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He worked out. He was still CrossFitting 6 months before he went into the hospital. And yet, as the week progressed, we found out that he had 100% blockages in the 3 major vessels of his heart, which the surgeon who did his heart cath could not explain to us how someone so young with no risk factors could have those kind of issues. The news got worse with a cardiac MRI that showed that about 40% of his heart was no longer even functioning. It was essentially scar tissue. It had been cut off from blood for so long that there was no salvaging it. So in the case of other smaller blockages, perhaps that were caught in time, of course, you could do bypass and things like that, but that bypass only works if there's living tissue to bypass blood to, and in his case, there wasn't. So the lower half of his heart was gone already, unsalvageable. So I was 35. almost 36 weeks pregnant with number 8, and the news just got worse and worse that week, and no one could explain it, and all the doctors were perplexed, and it was sad because the doctors were so sad about it. They kept coming in, they kept saying, "We're so sorry." They wanted so bad to fix him because he was so young, and yet they told him, "Go home. You have 3 to 5 years roughly to live. You need to get on a heart transplant list." We found out later that that wasn't really an option because he had a couple other health issues at the time that popped up after this, and they told me to take him home and manage the decline, which basically means keep him comfortable until he dies. Mm. We were completely and utterly shell-shocked because that it was absolutely devastating. I can't even explain fully accurately enough how devastating it was for especially for my husband, to go from thinking that he was healthy, maybe just sick, to "You're dying, go home." And we were in the hospital with him a week, we went home for a week, we turned right around and went and had my 6th C-section for our 8th child, and came home, and my husband was so sick right after we came home, he couldn't even dress himself or go walk to the bathroom without help. It's how weak he was. And something that most people don't seem to understand, and even I didn't understand at the time, is that I started grieving then.
Yeah.
When we got that prognosis, I started grieving a future that I would never have. Because when we got married, it was till death do us part, divorce is not an option. Um, our marriage was a sacrament. I wanted 50 years plus, and yet we come home with a diagnosis that means that the future I planned for myself and for us was never gonna happen. And I didn't realize at the time, but I started grieving then. Um, that pretty much changed everything. He was still able to work, which I'm very grateful for, but everything fell to me, and unfortunately, some on my older children as well. So everything, home care, home maintenance, lawn care, bills, doctor's appointments, homeschooling, all the childcare. He couldn't even sweep the floor without pain. He couldn't pick up our baby without pain. A lot of nights he couldn't sleep because of the pain. And it was, to say devastating isn't even enough to explain it. And so it changed all of us. And my children had to watch their dad get sicker and sicker, and we moved states. We were in Wisconsin. We loved Wisconsin. We moved to Tennessee as a last ditch, give him a warmer climate to see if it would give him a better quality of life for the time he had left. But yeah, it was completely unexpected and it was completely devastating for everyone.
I can't even imagine. As many times as I've read your stories and followed your story, I try to put myself in those shoes, and I can't even imagine my life without, my soulmate, and to do it under those circumstances, it's very awe-inspiring that you're still standing. I would like to pause here for just a moment and thank you for joining us today at the Miracle of Motherhood, helping moms tell their stories and building a community to help us not feel alone. As you may have guessed, this channel is not currently sponsored, but there is a few things that you can do to help support us in our work in helping mothers everywhere. The first thing you can do, of course, is to subscribe to this channel so you're notified every time that a new interview with a mom is uploaded. Another thing that you can do is to like, share, and of course comment and let us know how we are doing. Another way that you can help support this channel is to check out the links in our description below. Some of these links are to our guest businesses or websites, and some of them just go to help support this channel. Either way, you are helping us move forward in our mission to help moms be moms. Now, back to the miracle of motherhood.
Yeah. So, wow, like that kind of covered my next question, which is how do you even begin balancing life as a caregiver to your husband on top of being a mother to your children? How did that change the dynamic with you and your children when that happened?
And it's funny because even I'm almost a year out from him actually dying, and I'm not quite sure I've fully unpacked for myself that it had on me and probably all of us. Because for that 4.5 years, because he made it 4.5 of his 3 to 5 year prognosis. For that 4.5 years, I was acutely aware every single day that today could be the last day. So I spent that 4.5 years trying to make every day beautiful for him, trying to make every day peaceful, smothering him sometimes against his will in love and affection, and making as many memories as we could. Every day was spent managing his health and his moods. He understandably so, he battled some very severe depression, some suicidal ideation, and no one can blame him for that. And I definitely don't. But every day was spent with the cloud hanging over me that today could be the last day that I have my husband. And everything, my entire existence kind of revolved around making sure he was comfortable, making sure he laughed some, making sure he smiled some, making sure there were little things that could bring him joy every day. At the same time I'm doing that, all of that, I'm also was trying to keep things as normal as possible for my children because this is the only childhood they get. And I didn't want them to ever regret or resent that their father's illness colored their whole childhood. So I tried so hard to keep things normal for them and upbeat for them. And like I said, it's been a year and I still have not fully unpacked just the weight of that on myself, on my heart, on my soul, on my body. And during his illness, we had 2 more babies. And I got a lot of criticism for that, especially when we got pregnant with number 9. It was not planned. That was a God thing. And I got a lot of criticism for that. People saying, "Well, it's so selfish of you. Why would you get pregnant with another baby while your husband's dying?" And my cheeky response was always, "Well, I thought it would be not like meaner to tell a dying man no." That was always my response. I was like, "Pretty sure that's meaner than having another child." And I think about the testimony that he had during that 4.5 years because he still worked to provide for us. He still talked to my children. He talked to them a lot, especially my teens. He their moral compass was forged by their father. And he spent so much time talking to them, guiding them, and even his testimony of being open to life. I mean, he could have gotten sick and said, "Okay, no more babies," and yet he was willing to still welcome 2 more children that wouldn't exist without his generosity. And, I mean, we call the baby, who's almost 2, we call her our last great gift from dad, and she really is. She's funny and spunky and sweet as she can be. And I'm so grateful. She has her daddy's eyes. Every time I look at her, that she's got his eyes. The only one of our children that truly it's his eyes. And so we spent that 4.5 years living in this state of almost like a grief purgatory, I guess you'd say. And what's really interesting is you'll hear me say this, that the gratitude has started to outweigh the grief, and I'll explain that. So almost 15 years ago, I lost a daughter. I had twin girls, and one died in the womb at 20 weeks, and I had to continue carrying her body inside of my body, to get her sister to term. So I carried her body for 17 weeks after death, and I suffered a grief purgatory then too, because I had a loss. and yet she was still inside my body. So we had this 4 months of purgatory where we had a loss and yet there was no closure to it because we had not had a funeral, we had not had her, not had a chance to bury her. So the grief process was kind of stunted, for that 4 months that I carried her. And I can see God's provision even in that, because in so many ways, He prepared me for this back then. Because in so many ways, this was so similar. Because again, we had this prognosis and we knew what was coming. And yet we were in this grief purgatory for that 4.5 years. And I'm so grateful for some of the lessons that I learned grieving my daughter years ago. I mean, I still grieve for her. It's been almost 15 years, and I still miss my girl. And yet some of the things that we have suffered since my husband's diagnosis and his death, it kind of mirror that so much. And so I almost feel like God definitely gave me the grace of some sort of preparation when it came to that. So now that we're out of this grief purgatory, it's a funny stage of grief that we're facing now. One of the hardest things is that I have children in every single age bracket, every single age group you can have. I've got kids in it. And
Yep.
one of the hardest things I've ever had to face, and I've had to face some hard things, but it's watching them all grieve and trying to understand, because grief looks so different across those age groups. And in one child, it comes out as the 3-year-old didn't sleep through the nights in his own bed for months. He's just now a year out, is finally has begun actually sleeping in his bed at night. For the 6-year-old, it came out as anger, horrible bouts of temper and breaking things and destructiveness. And the 11-year-old, it came out as just being completely sullen and unresponsive to things. For the 16-year-old, who is my oldest son, it came out as complete stoicism, doesn't want to talk about it at all, just wants to go on with the mission, as it were. He's very much, we call him the drill sergeant. There's a reason for that. For my oldest daughter, it came out as a lot of grief over milestones that she had to face without her father. Like learning to drive was a huge thing. She had just started when he died, and they had always joked and laughed, and he was going to teach her how to drive, and then she had to face learning to drive without him. That was a horrible grief for her. For my 14-year-old, it came out as some very physical symptoms that we chased down for months trying to figure out what was going on with her, only to find out that it was her grief. It was her grief and her anxiety coming out. And that has been so difficult because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything with all these different age groups and how they're dealing with it. And at the same time, I'm grieving as well. And that is where I've probably seen God's grace the most, and the fact that we're all still standing. I'm happy to report that my children are doing amazing in school. They're still hanging out with their friends. There's no destructive or bad behaviors happening. They are genuinely some of the most amazing people on the planet. And I want to be like my children one day because they are hopeful and hardworking and loving and loyal and optimistic. And I don't know how I would do life without them. I mean, they're the reason I get out of bed every day. And we've managed all of this, and it's only by God's grace, because what we're doing right now, this path we're walking, this cross we're carrying, it is not possible to do without God's grace. It's just not. This is not humanly possible.
Yeah.
It's just not. So I definitely have had help, immense help, through this last year.
Yeah. God is good
Indeed.
all the time.
Indeed.
Through the worst trials. I know I've walked some pretty enormous trials myself, but every single time, he's there on the other side to help you through it. So
Fully convinced He doesn't give us anything to carry that He will not walk with us.
exactly.
Exactly. He prepares everything ahead of time. So if he's giving you something heavy, you best believe he's right there with you and he's not going to leave you. I remember coming home the day my husband died and coming home from the hospital and standing in the middle of my bedroom and just saying, God, you took my protector, you took my provider. You're going to have to fill those roles now. So I'm going to need you to step up. And and I can say wholeheartedly that I have not wanted for anything because he has provided everything this year.
Yep.
And I have had to lean on him in ways that I could never have imagined before. Because when all the other safety nets are stripped away, he's still there,
Yep.
for me and for my children. And this is where I'll say it again, the gratitude has started to outweigh the grief. When I look around and I get a lot of pity from people, and I don't want the pity. I really don't.
I know.
Because my life is beautiful. Is it a
Mhm.
little tragic? Yeah. Is there some heartbreak? Sure. But my life is beautiful. And every day I wake up and I look around and I see gifts and blessings. So I feel the pity is kind of wasted, if that makes sense.
And and being on the outside looking in, there is definitely a layer of pity that, I feel watching your story. But most of it is very awe-inspiring, which I've said before. It just so inspiring. Your whole story is inspiring from the moment that you found out about your husband's illness to now. Every step that I have watched your lens of Facebook, I know it's social media,
Well, we know every
but
person too, so that helps a little.
you tell some very personal stories Facebook
Yeah.
through your posts. And I've really appreciated being able to watch that because it is inspiring. It is a testament of your faith. It's a testament of God's grace for us no matter what. And I've walked some dark roads in my life and God's always been there, but I was never quite open to put it on Facebook. So I've read through so many of your things, and I'm just like, I remember being in some of those dark places through some of the tragedies in my life. I've lost 8 babies and yeah, lost parents and in-laws and just lots of people. My best friend's baby died, and just a lot of things have happened that I grief stricken throughout my life. And to watch your journey of grief and go, that's how it's done. That's how it's done.
Good.
That is a great testament of walking grief in faith. And I really appreciate you
Right.
being so open about it. I know, it's one day at a time. So, yes, there is that layer of, yes, I pity you because I don't want anybody to have to deal with that much grief,
I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Exactly. But I don't think it's wasted because it helps us look inward, looking at you and your faith and your testimony through all of this and your grief through all of this helps us be able to be like, that's how it's done. And God's always going to be there.
Mm.
And it really does bring a peace to us. So don't feel bad about the pity. It's not wasted.
Okay.
It gives us some retrospect, some inner lookings to be like, that's how, if anything like that ever happens to me again, I know who to talk to. So you've done an amazing job. So, like, you've answered almost all of my questions just talking and just sharing your story. So, you've kind of touched on this one. And especially when you were talking about the starting to grieve as soon as you found out that your husband was ill.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you're willing to share about how you personally were saying goodbye throughout those years. Like how did you come up with things to do? Telling us about trying to get him to smile and do just have a great time during the time he had left. What types of things were you doing to kind of inspire you to keep going at that during that time?
It's funny. I had some people tell me after he died, "Oh, I'm really surprised you stuck around." And I'm like, Why would I not? I made vows to this man and he was my best friend."
Your person.
Yeah. I never wanted him to feel less than. He was incredibly intelligent and he took great pride in his strength, and he was an incredible soldier. And it was so heartbreaking how devastating it was for him to suddenly be so weak, and it led to a big crisis of faith for him. And again, I don't think anybody can blame him for that at all. I certainly don't. Where he was like, "God, what are you doing to me? You have given me this huge responsibility, all these children, and you've crippled me. Like, how could you do this to me?" And so he
Like his Job moment.
very much, very, and he
Yeah.
don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that I fought the forces of hell for his soul because of the depths of despair and depression that he suffered from. And
You know,
and again, no one can blame him for that, and I certainly don't. But I
okay.
never wanted him to feel less than. He would get so frustrated at his physical limitations because there was so many things he couldn't do. And I would always tell him, I was like, "Dude, you're management. We're the peons. You make the plans, you boss us around, we'll take care of it." Is I There's a military joke in here. In the military, the first lieutenants are called butter bars because of their insignia. And so the joke was always when he was in the military is that you had the general and then you had the first lieutenants that had to do everything. And I would always tell him, like, "You're the general, you're supposed to be bossing us around. We're your butter bars. Put us to work." I never wanted him to feel unwanted or unloved, or I wanted him to feel strong where he could feel strong. And so I specifically would ask him for help on tasks that I was not good at, and that I knew he could feel a sense of accomplishment for. The kids and I were always telling him thank you, and we appreciate you, just showering him with love as much as I could. And also at the same time making a case for God loving him as much as possible because he really struggled. Our entire marriage, he struggled. He never on this side of heaven could see God as a loving father, and so that was always my thing was, God loves you. This is not a punishment. He has a plan in this. And I remember crying a few days after he died and sitting there missing him, and I saw they started laughing like I hadn't laughed in years, realizing that for once in my marriage, I got to be completely right about something, just once. Because now he's in heaven, okay? And now he is
Yeah.
with God and Jesus and in glory, and he's finally having to go, "Dang, she was right." Love me. He loves me more than I can imagine. Here's the proof, all those years she was right. And trying to make memories with him, taking as many pictures as I could with him. But it was also hard because there was so much we couldn't do because of his limitations. Hiking, we used to love to do trips, the county fair, little things like that. Even going to the park sometimes was too much. And he would always say, "Oh, just go ahead and go." And I'm like, "I'm not going to leave you behind." So I didn't. And I was, "We'll just make our own fun here." So we would do things at home instead if he was feeling up for it. If he wasn't feeling up for it, we did something else. And one of the hardest things to adjust to after he was gone was the kids would come to me and say, "Hey, can we go do X?" Right? And I'd be like, "Well, no, we can't." Oh, oh,
We can.
I guess we can. And it was such a strange kind of, it's going to sound really bad, but it was such a strange kind of freedom because
Mhm.
his health, his moods, everything, his needs had dictated everything for so long. And he had already lost so much. He had lost his health and his vitality, and the future that he had planned. And I was determined that he wasn't going to lose anything else. So I showered him as much as I could with love and affection and appreciation, because I did not want him to spend the last years of his life feeling like somehow he was less than the incredible man that he was, or that he was unwanted or useless. I did not want that for him. And one thing that I'm honestly really grateful for is, and this is what's hard when it comes to grief, because I miss him dearly and I always will, and I love him so much. But at the same time, I would not wish him back here. I would not wish him back here to the pain that he suffered through. Watching the person that I loved most in the entire world suffer and die slowly, it's one of the hardest things I have ever had to do. And now he is home and he is happy, and he is not even missing us. He is so much happier than I can even imagine. So even the pain of the grief I'm getting to bear so he doesn't have to, and I am okay with that. He bore enough pain when he was here. I'm grateful he doesn't have to bear this too. The hardest part of all of the grief, especially for me, is not my grief. It is watching my children suffer through all of this, because I would rather be disemboweled without anesthesia in a heartbeat than watch my children suffer and miss their dad, because I am a fixer. And I think a lot of moms are.
Us
There's
are.
there's Marthas and there's Marys, and I know without a doubt I am a Martha. I am a doer.
Okay.
You need a barn
I'm a-
whisked, you need the soup kitchen staffed, you need clothes for everybody in this village. Dude, I'm there. Like I do it and I get it done, and I have a mission, and I like fixing things, and there's no fixing this. And as a mom, that's breathtakingly painful, because the only thing I can do is hold them, cry with them, try to show them ways of dealing with it, trying to give them tools and coping mechanisms, but I can't fix it.
Right.
This is a suffering that I can't spare them, and I would give anything to be able to, but I can't. And this is actually why I started going to Grief Share about a month and a half after Eric died. Well, less than, actually, probably about 4 weeks, because I had 10 of these beautiful, innocent people looking at me with all this grief, like, "Mom, how do I do this?" Meanwhile, I'm here, I don't know how to do this either. I started going to Grief Share because I need tools, and I actually got criticized for going to Grief Share so early, and I was like, "Y'all, I've got 10 people here who are looking to me to guide them and lead them and give them tools for their grief, and I have no idea, because I'm completely lost. I'm devastated and heartbroken beyond what I can even describe, and so I needed help, and so I started going to Grief Share, and I'll tell you, that's agonizingly painful to take that class, and yet it was incredibly helpful. The team there was amazing. And it's interesting because there's yet another parallel here with grieving my daughter. Because when I started going to Grief Share last fall, I would go and I'd be okay through the week. I had no choice. Kids need to be fed, lessons have to be done, things for life have to happen, regardless of how I'm suffering. Because if you don't feed kids, they mutiny. So you got to feed them. So I would be okay, quote unquote, through the week. And I would go to Grief Share, which was on a Wednesday night, and I would sit there and sob the entire class, and bless the sweet leaders who were so sweet and patient with me, and all the people who walked through it with me, because I would sit there and I would sob, and then I would get up and dust myself off, and I would go home, and I would be okay for another week. And the parallel there is with my daughter. We found out Eric was going to get deployed to Afghanistan 1 month exactly after we buried our daughter. And then we had 6 months to prepare. He was gone for 4 months of that training. And then he was gone to the other side of the world, and I had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. And I would have a friend or a neighbor come and hang out with my kids during nap time, and I would go to the cemetery where my daughter was buried, and I would lay on the ground and I would sob my heart out in front of her headstone. And when I had exhausted my tears, I would get up and I'd dust myself off and I would go home to be mom. And so again, I I was prepared in a strange way for what I dealt with this time. And it's still a year out. You know, grief ambushes, so they call it. There's still things come up that absolutely take my breath away. And then others of the days were okay. There's other days we're okay. It's truly this constant kind of learning to acclimate to a world I never prepared for. I'm 41 years old and I feel like I've lived lifetimes already. We look like we're doing okay. And honestly, for the most part, we are. But everyone should understand that we still have abjectly abysmal days. Absolutely. This is still a process. And but the one thing that I keep kind of clinging to is I heard a homily right around the time that Eric had been deployed, probably about 3 months. And I had these 3 little kids. I was grieving my daughter. My husband's on the other side of the world getting shot at. The priest said that we needed to get to a point in our Christian life that we could say to God, for all that has been, thanks, and mean all, every bit of it. And for all that will be, yes, and mean all. And I remember sitting there, 3 little children, all alone, husband gone, grieving my girl, going, there is no way I will ever get there. It's just not possible. And yet, I did get there when it came to grieving my daughter. And so I'm trying to keep that in the forefront of my mind because that's where I'm trying to get to here. And his birthday was last month. He would have been 48. And we decided, me and my teens decided that in honor of his birthday, we were going to put together a list of 48 things we were grateful for from the preceding 10 months since he'd been gone. And I remember sitting down at this list with the numbers typed on it going, no way I'm going to be able to fill out this list. No way. And again, my kids are my heroes because we sit down to make this list and we keep adding to it and we keep adding to it. And so much so that I had too much. I had to combine some things and cut some things down. But by the time his birthday rolled around last month, we had 48 things that we could say we were grateful for from yeah, thing from friends that we never expected sticking closer, the fact that we didn't have a major car repair the whole time. One of the last things on the list was that I got to be his happily ever after. I mean, he got to spend his entire life with me, and I loved him to the very best of my ability. And so we got to his birthday and we're reading through this list and I can see it. I can see God's hand in all of this. And even on the hard days, that's what we keep clinging to because there is still beauty and there is still joy and there is still grace and there are still blessings. Some days you got to look real hard for the consolation, but it's always there. Always. And so as we come up on a year, it could be a lot worse, a lot worse. So I'm just grateful, truly.
Well, again, you covered one of my next questions was going to be about how the community has helped you through all of this, and Grief Share obviously had a big impact. What other parts of the community, your community, the homeschool community, your church community, strangers, how do you feel like they've come together and helped you and your children through this time?
I will say one thing that I have great compassion for people who are trying to minister to grieving people because especially in the early stages, we have no idea what they do need from moment to moment. And I remember this very vividly from losing my daughter, because there were days when I desperately wanted someone to say her name, to acknowledge that she existed, even though she never opened her eyes and she never cried. And then there were days where I just wanted the old me back, the me that I was before I was a grieving mother and had buried my baby. And I never knew what I was gonna be, which of those it was gonna be from day to day. I never knew. So I have great compassion for anyone who is trying to minister to someone who is grieving, because it is not an easy job. Which is why a lot of grieving people feel like people pull away or fall away, or they end up feeling like after the first little bit dies down that everybody leaves. And I've described it like, have you ever seen those commercials where there's one kind of stationary person and everything around them is swirling super fast, where it's like a blur of lights? That's how it feels to be at the very beginning of grief. You are completely stationary, locked in this massive world of excruciating pain, while everyone around you is going about life. And it's pretty much a universal sentiment of grieving people that they feel that way, at least at some point. So
I
I will
definitely
start off with that I have great compassion and I do not hold any hard feelings toward anyone. I have been amazed by who stayed and who didn't. I never would have expected showed up and have become my best friends. People that I really did expect to stay closer didn't. My husband's family, with one exception, has almost nothing to do with us, which was a shock to me. So, my church, I find great comfort in my faith. And actually, when it comes to support from church, actually, I'm a part of that now, because this week I could use prayers. So this week I actually start helping to lead a grief share at my parish. So I feel woefully unqualified to assist other grieving people. And yet somehow I've been called to do this. So I'm going, and God will equip me, I hope. Truly, I have had some amazing people that have stood by my side. And even more so, every time something bad has come up or something difficult has come up, there has been a solution that came and was so easy and so simple that I was not prepared for it. For instance, back in March, my oldest son was sword fighting with his younger brother, and his younger brother got him in the face and cracked one of his teeth. And
Ow.
yeah, it was not good. And I freaked out, and I will admit, I've still not gotten over the reaction of something bad happens and I immediately pick up my phone and I go to dial Eric's number and go, I can't do that. So I had to figure this out myself. So we ended up friends hooked us up with a dentist that we actually end up knowing through the Boys Trail Life troop, who took great care of us. It charged us nothing. I recently had the battery die in my van, and I was sobbing my heart out watching YouTube videos trying to figure out how to get the battery out of my van, which for some reason is underneath the driver's seat.
Yep.
And a couple of phone calls and my cavalry comes running, and by that evening, someone else had completely, not only do I have a new battery, this is what I needed, and it's already been replaced and fixed like that. Like, so I have a village, and I'm so grateful for it, because we don't have family involved, not much. I do my brother and sister-in-law, I see them, and they've been incredible. They live an hour and a half away. And I have my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, who has been great, but mostly it's just been friends, and there have been perfect strangers that have offered us comfort and kindness. There's an amazing program that is based out of Knoxville called the Widowed Parent Relief Project that have been amazing for us, have taken such great care of us in so many ways. So I feel like I've been pretty well taken care of for the most part. And some of it some of it is you're grieving, you're always going to feel lonely. That's just kind of part of it. Losing, I lost half my heart. Somehow I still function. So I told somebody that it kind of feels like losing half my limbs and still trying to walk around in the world in this sad parody of life with half my limbs missing. I have been blessed very much and in ways and from people and places I did not expect. But that's kind of how God tends to do things. Like his blessings very rarely show up the way you expect. They're always on time. It's always to the penny, never fails.
Mhm.
And yet it very rarely looks like what you think it will look like.
Like,
But
yeah.
honestly, that's kind of the fun of it though. 'Cause
Mhm.
what will God do now? What will God do next?
Yeah.
So no, I am nothing but grateful for the support I've received.
That's truly amazing because, again, I experienced the same thing going through grief where you just feel like the whole world is moving. I remember very vividly going to the grocery store and wondering how all of these people are moving when I lost my mother, when my mother's not in this world. Like, how can y'all still be happy and moving and doing things when my mom isn't here? So I couldn't imagine my spouse, but I really did. It just felt like everybody else was moving and I was standing still,
Yeah.
still holding her hand,
Yep.
you know. So
I know
it's
that
very,
feeling better than I'd like to admit, actually.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But of course, community is always there. God always shows up and shows
Yes,
out
indeed.
when you least expect
Indeed.
it. So one last question. So how are you taking care of yourself? How do you make time for yourself now that you're a single mom?
I hate that title too. Single mom.
No.
Ugh. Well, one thing that has definitely made taking time for myself, trying to fit something in for myself, has definitely been my teenagers. I will scream it from the rooftops. I have the most amazing, won't call them teenagers. Eric always said you're either an adult or you're a child. And if you act like a child, I'll treat you like a child. If you act like an adult, I'll treat you like an adult. So I will say young adults. I have the most amazing young adults who are incredibly loving and giving and helpful. It's really bad because I have friends who fight with their teenagers, and I don't have any experience with that yet. I might still. I've got several left to come up through the teen years, so I might still have that. But I'm very blessed that I don't fight with my teens. They don't even fight with each other. They're like three peas in a pod, and they are so incredibly helpful and so incredibly giving. And so that's part of that makes it much easier, especially after Eric died. So much paperwork, so much stuff to do, and they were willing to babysit their younger siblings for me so that I could get things done, and they still do that. I do pay them, but so that I will sing their praises. They are incredible, and I'm so grateful for their help. Our life would be infinitely harder if it wasn't for their selflessness and their sacrifices for our family and for their younger siblings. Their younger siblings have no idea how good they have it because they have their older siblings be that incredible. I have very sweet friends that have come and helped. One thing that I do for myself is I do go to mass and adoration by myself every week, being able to sit in the quiet with Jesus for an hour. I'm pretty sure that's a big part of why I'm still standing. And I've pretty much only missed like 2 weeks out of the whole year so far. I was worried that I would drift away from God through this. And so I challenged myself to read the Bible in a year because I don't have enough challenges in my life. So I've kept up with that. And so far, so good. I have not fallen behind. I'm still on track to finish the whole Bible in a year. Honestly, taking care of myself now looks like small things. A hot bath when the kids go to bed, or texting a friend about something goofy. One of my favorite things even, which is kind of funny because it's not necessarily self-care for me, but I feel like it is I love sending cards to people, and so I do that quite frequently. And that actually for me, the thought that someone is gonna get something in the mail that they did not expect, That's not a bill, and that I got to send that for whatever reason, that just makes me so happy. I do spend a decent amount of time in prayer, especially when I'm rocking the baby to sleep at night. I get outside as much as possible, which I recommend for everyone. I don't know if you've ever seen the 1,000 hours outside challenge. The kids and I have done that for the last several years. Last year, we were like 1,040 hours this year. If we keep up our current pace, we're on track to have probably 1,200 hours outside. So we are outside a lot. And I recommend that wholeheartedly to anyone and everyone. Vitamin D and fresh air, that will lift your spirits. Go and, for better or worse, touch grass. Go connect with God outside
Yes.
in nature. I know it's Tennessee, it's hot. Go anyway. You can always take a shower after. It's not that bad. And it truly is kind of a little something here or there during the day that's kind of the recharge. And honestly, I'm sure this will get easier as we go along. Be honest, I do feel stretched very thin most of the time. And the exhaustion is pretty extreme. And that's nobody's fault. It's a big job. And there's only one of me.
Mhm.
So I would have to say the biggest thing that keeps me going, gives me strength, has got to be the prayers that everyone says for me. I have so many people praying for me. I am rich in prayers said for me and sacrifices made for me. And truly, on the days when I shouldn't be okay, I still can't shake this this certainty that this is all part of his plan. Nothing happens by accident. I'm not forgotten. I'm never alone. I'm just a little wildflower in his garden. I'm nothing special. I'm nothing important. Yet he has not and will not forget me. So even on the hard days, that knowledge is buried so deep in my heart and soul that I can't shake it. It's there. And that is a grace. That is a gift to have that certainty so deep. And truly that is what gets me through most days. And I my prayer ever since Eric was diagnosed, because there were days that were so hard that I could not pray. And especially toward the end of his life, even though I didn't realize it was, and it's funny because looking back, I should have known. Everyone said he looks so good, he looks so good, but I should have known he was getting worse because I'm the one who saw. There were so many nights where he did not sleep from the pain, and he would always tell me, "Go to sleep." And I it's like, "I'm not gonna leave you alone." So I would hold him and comfort him, tell him how much I loved him, how much I appreciated him, until he was calm enough and comfortable enough that he would eventually fall asleep. And my prayer the whole time was, "Father, make me fearless. I don't wanna be afraid of anything." And I still pray that pretty much every day. And it's one of those things you gotta be careful what you ask for, because I asked him to make me fearless, and he keeps sending me opportunities to be afraid, to give in to the fear, because I have no idea what my future holds or my children's future holds. The person I planned my entire life with is gone. And I am still very young and still potentially could have a long life left. I have no idea what that looks like. I have no idea. I spent 17 years as a stay-at-home wife and mother, and that will have to change pretty soon. So, some days, on my worst days, my day is a big question mark, a huge question mark. My future and my life and what it's going to be, and my children's life, what it's going to be, is a huge question mark. And so I keep getting presented with these temptations to fear, these opportunities to be afraid, and yet I keep praying to be fearless. So he is slowly but surely giving me that warrior spirit that I've been asking for. And I'm really grateful for it, because I wouldn't be surviving without it. There is this cross that we've had to bear, me and my children, It's not on human strength. It's just not. So when I stood in my bedroom and told him, "You've got to step it up," he did. Because the only reason that we are still here, we are still surviving, I would even say we're thriving, to be perfectly honest with you, which seems impossible given what we're going through. And yet that's how I would describe us is, yeah, some days we're just surviving, but some days we're doing pretty darn good, which I would say is thriving. The only way that this is possible is because he makes it so. So that truly, I wish I could say I've got some magic technique or some secret weapon or there's some miracle chocolate bar out there that makes everything better, but truly it's just this unshakable certainty that he sees me and I'm not forgotten, and I'm not doing.
Absolutely, you're not doing it
Mhm.
alone. I read recently a statement about faith that I think sums up this your whole journey. And and it was that faith is the biggest act of courage anyone can do.
Hopefully you can be
Just
courageous when you don't feel courageous, because I sure as heck don't feel courageous most days.
but you still carry this faith that God's going to get you through it, and that is courage. That is being fearless. And I just want you to take that with you because you are showing that fearless nature by just having the faith and knowing, just knowing that God's got your back.
I've seen too
You
much.
got
You
it.
know what? I've seen too much to believe anything else.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you so, so much for coming on our show today and sharing your story and just really helping us all to feel a little bit more faithful moving forward. You don't know how appreciative I know I am, and some of our listeners are going to be to hear your story.
Thank you. And I would ask you and any of your listeners to pray for me. Your prayers
Absolutely.
are powerful, and they're like air to me and my children. So if they're willing, pray for me, especially as I start this journey of being a leader for Grief Share myself, because I just want to be the light and love of Jesus to others, especially those who are grieving. But it's also a tall order. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to make anyone's grief worse. So pray for me that if God wills, He'll use my weakness and my struggles to help encourage others. I'd be so grateful for your prayers and your listeners' prayers when it comes to this, and for our continued walk, that God will help us to have complete confidence in His plan for our lives, whatever it is.
You've got it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Please like, share, and comment. Subscribe for more Miracle of Motherhood stories.